Hi, everyone. Let's talk tonight about content. Now, tonight we're not talking about creating content, producing content, a lot of the things that we typically tend to talk about when we talk about content as it relates to business owners. But today we're specifically discussing information overload and controlling content consumption because with all the data that we take in every single day, this can really affect our cognitive abilities, our mental overwhelm, and that's something that we want to start keeping in check as it relates to our self-care and really keeping our minds fresh for our tasks and focused. So we live in an age where information is wonderfully accessible, often free. I don't know about you, but I'm an addict for podcasts. I love a good podcast when I'm getting ready for work in the morning or driving to work. I've got a big commute. When I'm cooking, I like to put podcasts on. I love learning, and we are very, very blessed and fortunate to live in an age where so much information is readily available, and particularly so much information that helps us grow our businesses, become educated on trends and what's working and be inspired by other business owners who are reaching the kind of success that we want to emulate. But if you think of it in terms of fuel. So the things that we take in, the information, the content that we consume, if you can think of it like fuel, just like you would the way that you take food into the body. Well, of course, in America, we are in westernized worlds, we are very well aware of the negative detrimental effects that over-consuming food will do to us. Even though food is necessary, it's important to keep us alive. We definitely need to have it in the right amounts. Well, I really think that content can be equated now to the same type of fuel that we put into our bodies. The type of fuel that we put into our minds can, if overdone, actually have some detrimental effects. So I don't know about you, but I get to the point where I feel like there's so much information. I just want to take it all in because I don't want to miss anything. I don't want to have any dead space that I could be put to use and be productive. But sometimes what happens is when I'm constantly listening to a podcast or reading the latest blog post or watching the latest video, just like you're doing now. So we're going to talk about how to be selective. That sometimes I feel a little maxed out. I feel a little fatigued. I feel a little bit of a content hangover, if you will. And sometimes it also makes me feel a little overwhelmed that I'm not doing everything because we take in all this information at a pace that's much more rapid than we could ever hope to implement that. So I want to talk about controlling content consumption so that we have that sweet spot, just like anything else in our lives that we're taking in, that is going to help spark our creativity, to inform our business choices, to make us feel like we're growing without overwhelming us or making us become content obese. If we're using that analogy, I definitely think it works. So I'm going to house all these things. I'm offering several strategies. You do not have to use all of them. You can pick and choose, find what resonates with you, but they're all going to be housed under 3 strategies. So the first strategy we're going to look at tonight is controlling the content that goes in. So I think this is important because there's so much readily available that we're constantly having to make decisions about which podcasts we listen to, or what emails we're going to read, or what videos we're going to watch and look at. Now the problem is we are constantly being tempted by all of these things, whether if you just hop on Facebook intending to maybe check in with your Facebook group, and then all of a sudden you've got all these other options and things to click on, and there's so many opportunities to become distracted, and ads and the emails that we didn't really mean to sign up for, but they're there, and maybe that one subject sparks our interest. We have to start being a little bit more judicious about which content we take in so that we're really making the most of our learning opportunities and being selective. So one helpful tidbit that you might want to implement if you're not doing this already, and this is going to help you with more than just content overload. It's also going to help you with time management and making sure that you're not spending your efforts on things that are not going to give you those accurate outcomes that you're after. But scheduling the time that you spend on social media. this is one I've been working on myself. I'm not perfect, but I set a goal for myself this quarter to reduce the number of times that I check in for, say, Facebook or Twitter. So even just allowing yourself specific times to check in and then trying to stay out of those social media platforms the rest of the time, that by default is going to limit some of the stuff that just comes floating through your head that you're not actively seeking out. So the things that come in front of your periphery that you wouldn't necessarily have set out to watch or listen to, that's just going to eliminate some of those rabbit holes, some of the distractions that could come up as a result. Another tip or strategy that you could look at in regards to controlling the content that goes in is to do what Chalene Johnson recommends and pick only one course topic that you'll be focusing on for a set period of time and only taking in information that pertains to that topic. So I tried this out last quarter. I knew that one of my priorities for my business was to learn more about motivation, habits, and the psychology that goes into those habits that we do on a daily basis. And I knew that was a really key understanding and that was important for me to get a grasp on in order to better be able to serve my customers and get them over those challenges and over those pain points. So I knew that that was one thing I really wanted to learn. So for about a quarter of the year, I only selected podcasts or blog posts that were specifically in line with that topic. And that really helped, not having to cast a wide net. It really helped me to kind of narrow in and set some parameters so that I had a trajectory that I was following, like a course syllabus, instead of just whatever sounded good at the time. So in regards to content that you're actively seeking out, I think that's a really great strategy to try. Another option as far as controlling what content goes in is to start to get intentional about mixing other forms in, other topics, subject matter in regards to what you're consuming. And I don't mean, that may sound like it was contradictory, but I don't mean that you're necessarily mixing up topics, but that you're going outside, you're expanding outside the realm of business. So maybe for you, this means listening to a comedy podcast or watching a funny video to take a break, or maybe just listening to some music. Remember those days when we were driving in the car, we actually listened to music? Try intermixing some non-productive stimuli that are just going to make you more creative. I have started doing this over the past few weeks where I'm not necessarily listening to a podcast every single spare minute that I'm in the car. Maybe sometimes I'm just listening to some music, or maybe I'm listening to a spiritual podcast, or before bed I'm winding down with a book on spirituality. And that in and of itself is actually going to make you more productive because it's going to make your brain more alert, more relaxed, or the relaxed mind is the creative mind. So that's another option, is to not always put pressure on yourself to make the content that you consume quote unquote productive. And ironically, you're probably going to be more served with a fresher, sharper mind to do your work when you're mixing it up. So those are all some tips or some options for you to try out in regards to monitoring the content that comes in. Next, we're going to talk about monitoring what you do with the content. So as I mentioned earlier, it can be really, really overwhelming to hear all these wonderful ideas of things that absolutely worked for this person and was a game changer for that person. And of course, we have these clever headlines that this is the one thing that you need in your business that you're not doing. Keep in mind, there are so many different ways to be successful. You do not have to implement everything that you listen to. However, if you're taking in information to learn and grow and be educated, it is a complete waste of time to do that if you don't plan to do something with some of the information. So I really suggest, as soon as I keep saying listen, because for me, I listen to podcasts, but if it's reading a blog post, or if it's maybe watching a video or something of that nature, whenever you complete the thing that you just learned, jot down what it is you're going to do with the information. But here's the thing, be judicious. Give yourself permission not to do all 5,000 of those strategies that were just given to you. even using this video as an example, I'm giving you several different options, but I want you to pick one or two that resonate with you, because if you try to implement everything at once, you're not going to get anything done. You're going to be scattered. You're going to be unfocused. I love what David Siteman Garland said about the secret to being really, really successful. It wasn't, webinars or this type of email follow-up or this type of launch sequence. His strategy for success said the most successful people are the ones who say no 99% of the time, because they're able to stay focused. So take what works for you, take what serves you, but do not put pressure on yourself to go down every single offering that is presented to you. You simply can't do it. And you're not going to get results with anything if you're just constantly going a little bit in this direction and then hopping over to this path and then hopping over to this path. Take what you need, leave the rest behind, but do put what you need into writing. So I like to either transfer it right over to my to-do list, or if it's just something that I need to think about and remember, or a point that I want to dwell on, then I'll type it into a note on my iPhone. So those are some great options as well for monitoring what you do with the content. Another thing that I think is really important to do is to ask yourself how you feel after listening to something or reading something or watching something. How do you feel after you consume that content? Do you feel overwhelmed? Do you feel stressed out? Do you feel guilty that you're not doing something you should be doing? If so, that might be a key indicator that you're taking in too much information, or it might mean that you might just need to recognize that you don't need to do every single thing that is ever suggested or put forth for you to do. Finally, let's talk about scheduling non-stimulation time. So this can have a little bit of crossover if we're talking about something like listening to music or doing something for fun or watching TV. Of course, there's a little bit of crossover because those things don't necessarily demand a lot of attention or learning or retention. But I do think there is a time and a place as well just to not be stimulated. We are taking in 5 times the amount of information than we did in the 1980s. So in a period of just a few decades, we have so much coming at us, demanding our attention, which takes up brain resources. It takes up, believe it or not, water in our bodies. We need to be drinking more water when we have more thoughts and input that our brain is constantly having to process. It can really be a lot. So scheduling some time where you don't have anything coming at you, and there's actually studies that show that boredom can actually really be a catalyst for creativity. So carving in that time for kind of white space in your schedule and in your brain, whether that's through meditation, or maybe that's just sometimes turning the radio off, turning everything off when you're driving in your car and just being alone with your thoughts, or just taking a minute to hang out and focus on one thing at a time. If you're home playing with your kids or your dogs, you're cooking, maybe you're just doing that and you're not having to constantly be exposed to constant stimulation. I hope that helps you. I'm going to leave you with one bonus strategy for everything that we just talked about. For all the information that you do take in, it is critical that you get a sufficient night's sleep to actually encode all of that information into your memory and be able to access and actually utilize it. So make sure you're getting enough sleep. Everything that you learn is all for naught. So those people that pull all-nighters studying for a test, they're doing the worst possible thing they could do, because the brain actually requires sleep to process information and encode it into our memory. So make sure that all that hard work that you're doing, learning and educating yourself, is not going for naught. Make sure you get that quality sleep that you need in order for your brain to actually use all that information.